Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast. The songs and stories of a music icon.
Earlier this week, at the time of recording, I visited Brussels for a couple of days with my wife, and while we were there, we discovered a surprising number of brilliant record shops, all closely scattered around the city centre. I managed to find an excellent haul of Numan records and CDs that I didn't own. In one such shop called Horserie, I found a number of 7-inch records, including several by Dramatis, the band that Gary's backing group formed after his self-imposed hiatus in 1981. And in a tiny little room called Electrocution, playing a fantastic blend of what I would describe as metal trance, they had a couple of Numan records, including a CD of the first ever Numan album I ever owned as an 8-year-old kid in 1994. My brother bought it for me for Christmas that year, the relatively newly released Best of Gary Numan. Then I only had the cassette, and it was my prized possession in an era where discovering more info pre-internet was rather difficult. And weirdly looking back, the cassette version didn't have the likes of Metal, Films, ME, I'm an Agent, etc. So it was another year or so before I heard those. And so for a while I had an affinity to Numan's post-Telecon era releases from 80 to 83. But in this shop, I bought the double CD, which had far more tracks on it, if only I knew. And it reminded me that on the cassette, aside from Cars, my favourite song on that best of back then, and still one of my favourites now, was a song that in hindsight is rather different to the majority of everything else on the track list, a song called Love Needs No Disguise. The limited information on the cassette, and to be honest, as an 8-year-old I probably wasn't looking at it too closely, didn't mention that the song was actually technically by a different artist and only featuring Gary on vocals. It was only years later that I found all of this out. But to this day, it makes Love Needs No Disguise one of the most intriguing songs of his career. Dramatis were formed by 4 of the musicians who had been the core of Gary Numan's live band in the late 70s and very early 80s. The lineup consisted of Chris Payne, Russell Bell, Denis, Haines and Cedric Sharpley. All 4 had played with Numan on tour and part of Tube Army in Gary's earlier era before he retired from road work in April 1981. Paul Gardner was also offered a role, but he declined. With Numan stepping back from live performance, they decided to strike out on their own and embrace the burgeoning electronic pop and new wave movement. They signed to the Rocket Record Company, which was Elton John's label, and in December 1981 released their sole studio album For Future Reference, a synth-driven set blending mechanised rhythms with melodic keyboard lines. The band released several singles, but their biggest chart success came when Numan agreed to provide lead vocals on Love Needs No Disguise.
My old band were keen to stay together after Wembley and formed a new band called Dramatis. I visited them in the studio where they were recording their debut album, and they played me a track called Love Needs No Disguise, a song about our time together. It was great, and they asked if I wanted to sing the vocal, which I was happy to do. We made a video for it, and it was released on 5th December on the Beggars label. It reached number 33 in the chart, which wasn't too bad. The album it came from, For Future Reference, came out soon after. I would have been more helpful in promoting it if I could, but I had a major project of my own underway at the time.
The song opens with a haunting synth line that Daft Punk or Kraftwerk would be proud of, before it slowly kicks in with Ced Sharpley's drums that fade in to an eventual awesome beat. The beauty of the song is its perfect mix of catchy 80s synth pop with a somewhat darker Depeche Mode style track, the brilliant melody and chorus sung by Gary, and an excellent combination of synths, piano, and something rare for a Numan song back then, electric guitar performed by Bell and Payne's sublime viola. The instrumental break of the song in particular is something of pure beauty. When you listen to Love Needs No Disguise in isolation, it sounds like a cool, slightly detached early 80s synth-pop song on intimacy or some sort of broken down love story. But Russell Bell has confirmed something far more specific. He wrote it about their time touring with Gary Numan, and it was effectively a tribute to him. Speaking to Russell in an earlier episode of the podcast, he said,
"Yeah, no, it was about our time touring with Gary. We toured the skies, and the friends all go home. Love Needs No Disguise. It was literally about that, which is kind of ironic because he ended up singing a song that was written as a tribute to him."
Yeah.
So the opening lines of the song feel like classic observational romance imagery. She dances, he watches, she sighs. But through Russell's explanation, this becomes rather performative between artist and audience. One performs, one observes. The emotional exchange is real but public. Remember, love needs no disguise. This line reads as a reassurance. Authenticity doesn't need theatrics. It may subtly counter the idea that Gary's aloof stage persona meant emotional distance, but beneath the image there was a genuine connection. If the park gates are closed, remember we toured the skies. This is where the touring reference clicks into place. Park gates suggest venues shutting, shows ending, access closing off. We toured the skies feels expansive. They've travelled the world, taken music across countries, literally toured the skies. So this is about the come down after gigs. The crowd disperses, the spectacle ends, but the bond remains. And this next line hits the hardest in context. And if the friends all go home, you know love needs no disguise. Touring bands form intense temporary families, then everyone leaves. What remains? Loyalty, shared experience, something deeper than fame. Given this was written right after Gary's supposed retirement, it reads like reassurance during uncertainty. Whatever happens next, the connection is real. We can lock all the doors, forget the reasons and fame. There's no deceiving inside, you know we'll all be the same. This feels like pulling away from public scrutiny. Close the doors, ignore the press, expectations, stories. Inside the circle, there's no artifice. That's particularly resonant given Gary's intense media exposure in 79 to 81. So all in all, it isn't really a love song in the romantic sense. It's about artistic kinship, shared experience, and the idea that true connection doesn't need image, mythology, or stage lighting. And that makes it one of the more quietly emotional songs orbiting Gary's early 80s world. For this song, Gary ended up reuniting with his band. Explaining more, Russell said,
"So it was basically mainly Denis and I doing the lead vocals. And it was just like whoever had the most input on the song with the vocals. And then Gary came along, and he came along to Ridge Farm Studios where we were recording. I was just about to do the vocals on Love Needs No Disguise. And he said, "Oh, I really like that. Can I sing that?" So I went, "Yeah, sure." Saved me a lot of effort. And of course, it came out really well. Did a lot better than I could.
video is one of the better ones of Gary's career, featuring him and the band performing at a club at Shepperton Studios, and from what I can see, 200 fans were invited to see the video being made and appear in the performance via his fan club. With Gary appearing in his dance-style get-up, it's great to see Chris, Russell, Denis and Cedric perform properly alongside him in a video. As Gary said, the song reached number 33 in the chart, which I'd say is a travesty. It should have been a much bigger hit, but as Gary hinted, perhaps it just got lost under the radar at the time, the lack of proper promotion, plus it was released around Christmas time. I was looking, it randomly had 2 weeks in a row at number 33 and then 7 weeks inside the top 75.
I think that's lovely. Bucks Fizz, The Land of Make-Believe, and that goes straight in at number 35 in the Radio 1 Top 20. And right now, at number 34, it's down, I'm afraid, for Buenos Aires, Bad Manners. Dramatis used to be Gary Numan's backing band. He was persuaded to make a guest appearance on this particular track, and it's gone straight in at this week's number 33.
Despite some attention from Numan's fan base and critical interest, commercial momentum was limited, and the group sadly disbanded in 1982 as Numan returned to touring and recording with his own band. After decades of being largely dormant, Russell and Chris revived the name somewhat in the late 2010s, announcing new material and plans for further releases. Sadly, before this in 2012, plans to reunite Dramatis were cancelled following the passing of Cedric Sharpley, who died from a heart attack on the 13th of March 2012. Numan has performed the song 52 times live thus far, however, only across 2 different years, the majority of which was in 1983, but he brought it back in 2012 in tribute to Cedric, showing a photo of his former bandmate while performing it. Overall for me, Love Needs No Disguise will always have a soft spot, and it's probably one of my top 10 Numan tracks, even if technically it's only one he featured on. A brilliant song written by Russell, and one I'd love for Gary to bring back in his set every once in a while. So I had loads of comments from you guys about this song on X and Facebook. Going through some of them now. Wayne Tuck said, "I am the lad on the video who has stood on a box above everyone else in a trilby and trench coat. Gary's mum told me to stand up there. I swapped trilby hats with Gary and Russell during the filming. That's amazing." And similarly, Joanne Seymour said, "My friend and I were also in the video doing our Numanoid dance moves at the back. She trod on Gary's foot." Nick Grove said, "Blown away the first time I heard this song, a C90 cassette in a mate's Cortina, early 80s. I was hooked by the brilliant slow introduction, the steam train percussion, the fact that it gets better and better, and then the lyrics. It all played into the heartstrings of an impressionable young lad like me. Still played a lot in my house." Cameron Healy said, "Always makes me think of Christmas. It was released in November and I was playing it to death over Christmas as a 15-year-old. Tony Majika said, "A friend and myself were both early members of the fan club, so got to go to Shepperton Studios and be part of the video. I had a terrible speech impediment, but found myself by a door and Gary walked in. I put my hand out and shook hands and said perfectly, 'Can you sign my record, please?' I took a copy of one of his singles with me. He replied that he will sign it after the video. I knew I couldn't say it again and I didn't get my single signed. That's such a shame, Tony. I hope you've met him since then, and if not, I'm sure we could get him to sign it now. Got to get that sorted." Marilyn Towie said, "The end of the video when the car drives off and Gary just walks out of the shadows, cool as anything with the girlfriend. I love it and end up rewinding it over and over again. First time seeing that scene, nearly took the roof off the house. Now I'll have to watch it again. Great song and video." Ian Charles said, "I feel very nostalgic for this one. It was a different sound with the influence of Chris Payne very clearly, and Russell Bell able to put in some nice guitar work. Gary's vocals were strong and lift the track. Nice plain cover with Dramatis typeface and Gary's signature as well. Cooper Doug said, my better half Karen loved the song so much, particularly the meaning behind her lyrics. She had it tattooed on her upper back a few years ago. We sent a pic to Russell Bell, who approved. Jeremy Lane said, my wife arranged for this song to be played live at my 60th birthday party. We loved it. That's amazing. Andy Legg said, always thought it was a brilliant song. It's quite haunting, great vocals and drums, and by coincidence I saw a 12-inch version in the flea market in Brighton today for £8. Annoyingly, of all the Dramatis songs of vinyls I did find in Brussels, that wasn't one of them. I will get it at some point, I'm sure. Zara DeLuca said, I went to the video shoot at Shepperton Studios. I lived in Folkestone at the time, went with my pen pal Tracy from Ashford. It was my first time of meeting Gary, which overwhelmed me greatly, so much so I had to have a whole week off school afterwards. How did you sort that out, Zara? It's amazing. I loved it, such a fabulous experience, and I love the song. It's amazing how many of you are in the video. Paul Hunson said, a fantastic track, shows just how capable Dramatis boys were as songwriters as well as musicians. Its lack of airplay and chart success shows the apathy shown towards Gary at the time, and Dramatis suffered as a band for it. Not sure releasing a month before Christmas was best timing. And finally, Andy Brown said, I thought, great, he's missing his live backing band already and he'll be touring again before too long. I was nearly right, they were back together again in 1983. And remember, I'd love to hear your Numanoid stories, how you found Gary's music and what he means to you, just like Lindsay Allen did. She said, hi Tom, after rediscovering Gary at Glastonbury, I've been hooked ever since. Was a fan in my early teens, went to his Premier Hits tour in Birmingham when I was 15 with my mum. The ex-husband sadly didn't share my music interests, and I missed the best 20 years of Gary's career from Sacrifice to Intruder. I spent the past 8 months catching up, buying as many CD albums as I get my hands on, t-shirts, hoodies, music magazines, autobiography, joined a couple of fan groups on Facebook and even signed up to Patreon. I came across a little song called I Don't Believe. Apparently it was a B-side to New Anger, I think. If Gary made happy tunes, this would be up there with Like a Bee film. I've happily played both of these on loop for hours. Also just wondered if you had checked out Chilled with the Ghost, Chris Fielding from Tubeway Days and Anthony Gilroy of Vanilla Coffee. They were recently released a double CD of Numan covers and they are absolutely brilliant. I bought one. Their version of Cold Warning gives me chills. It's so beautiful. Yes, I have. And as you say, they're brilliant, just like Tubeway Days. Thank you for your podcast. Love listening to them. Best wishes, Lindsay. Thanks so much for that, Lindsay. It's amazing that I love people either discovering or rediscovering Gary even now. So glad to see you finally got back to his music after 20 or so years away. It's never too late. So please do like what Lindsay did. Send in your own stories or anything you'd like to say. Just reach out over email on numanpodcast@gmail.com, or I'm on all the socials at Numan Podcast, or head to numanpodcast.com for more. And remember, if you'd like to support me and the show and to get your hands on some Electric Friends merch, please do. It means a lot. T-shirts, hoodies, stickers. There's a mug on there now as well. Head to the show notes of this episode for where to get them, or head to electric-friends.printify.me. For now though, have a good one. Hope you're all safe and well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast. The songs and stories of a music icon.